Hi, this is Levi. Before we get into this episode, I wanted to take a quick minute to introduce a few of the other podcasts in the WCF Podcast Network. Tom and Naomi are exploring how we interact in our ecclesial relationships in From the Platform. It's a very in-depth series that is incredibly helpful for understanding and developing compassion and better listening practices. That's From the Platform. Sam Taylor from Cleveland, Ohio, produces weekly devotionals in Pause to Consider. Think Mr. Rogers meets Fireside Chat. I love Sam's humble style and think every episode is fantastic. You can find both of those wherever you get your podcasts or on our website at wcfoundation.org. Now, here's the show.
The following episode contains themes of mental health which some listeners may find difficult. If you're feeling vulnerable right now, feel free to listen in later when you're feeling ready.
Welcome back to Little Faith. Today I'm here with Michael Ash from Route 66. Hi Michael, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing grand.
So tell us, for anyone who hasn't met you before, tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, so yeah, I'm Michael. That one's self-explanatory. I'm from the UK, and I'm actually a structural engineer, studying structural engineering in Wales, in Cardiff. I'm actually from Bournemouth, though, sunny Bournemouth. Which
is by the sea. For anyone.
It is by the sea. South Coast, wonderful place. I haven't been there in a while though, so I'm kind of missing it. I'm missing the sea. I really miss the sea. I know Cardiff's sort of by the sea, but yeah, I make music. I produce podcasts, funnily enough, and yeah, just a bit of video editing alongside that. Hoping eventually to get along there. So yeah, bringing my creative side to Christianity is what I try and do.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you have started a movement called Route 66. So tell us a little about what Route 66 is and how long have you been going?
Yeah, Route 66. I started it, I think it must have been about 3 years ago, about 3.5 years ago in the summer of 2017. So I took a trip of trust to Marseille. I went with a bunch of friends and we didn't know where we were going. We basically signed up to this event where they would send us an envelope with a destination in. We just had to get to an airport. And they popped us on a plane and we went to Marseille for a weekend. Yeah, we didn't know until 4 a.m. that we were going to Marseille. No supplies, just sat around. And while I was there, we walked to the top of this big hill in the blistering heat of 2017's heat wave. So it was about 50 degrees at the top of this hill. And right there, I sort of felt this awesome sort of presence, really hot, really sweaty, and I just sat down and looking out over the Mediterranean, I penned what was the first Route 66 song. So it was up there. It was called Live in You, and it's actually out now as on an EP and a single. But yeah, Route 66 started on top of that hill in Marseille, and it started actually as an idea of a collaborative movement. I wanted it to be lots of people writing songs for the Christadelphian community to sort of, bring contemporary music in. We have our Green Book, we have our PTLs, and they're great, but there's also a whole sort of genre that we haven't touched on, and that's, contemporary music. And a lot of young people, particularly, still, they really enjoy contemporary music, and I thought that would be a really useful tool to get people talking about issues and talking about emotions and talking about God and Jesus in a sort of really interesting way and trying to use music to bring that along. So now it's changed a little bit. It's not so collaborative, but it's still very much a tool that I like to use to get my own thoughts down about my faith. And it's now turned into what I'd like to call a project that is music for mental health. So it's been transformed over the years, and now we're writing music that sort of captures the human experience with our lives and it's honest. So the crux of it now is that it's honest music for mental health, and it's just a vessel for us to talk about faith in a different way, to really get emotions out and to help people feel it, because music is so powerful and it's really very emotive stuff. So it can connect with people on a different way to speaking from a platform. And it's something that I don't feel we're using enough, and I'd like to try and use it a bit more.
Yeah, I love that idea. And I definitely feel like music is kind of multi-level as well. Like the music definitely touches on many of them as more of an experience and a personal expression. I love what you were saying about honesty, because I think, there has been a lot of stigma about mental health in the past, and there still is to some extent, which is why we need to talk about it even today. But honesty is so important, like being able to be honest with ourselves and honest with each other. And music's such a great way to be genuine.
Yeah, totally. And it's really important that we are honest, because by being honest, you're not just telling the truth, but you're being true to yourself. And it's those conversations, on a Sunday morning, someone comes up to you at the meeting and goes, "Oh, are you all right?" And you go, "Yeah, I'm absolutely fine." And inside you're going, "You know what? It took me 3 hours to get out of bed this morning, but I can't say that, because they're going to then ask questions and all this." It's the honesty is going, "You know what? I've had a really rubbish morning," and being able to have that conversation and be open with someone. So there's lots of things inside that.
Yeah, and I think we can be scared of being honest because we feel we could be judged or misunderstood. And I think at times there's something so public about a Sunday morning that it doesn't feel like it's a safe space to have maybe one-to-one conversations that are deeper or more private or more honest. But there's definitely so much scope for us to develop an environment and a culture where that space is safer, whether it's like in your house or in a coffee shop or driving with someone in the car. Some examples like of where you can have richer conversation and be more open about how you're doing. It's not just this kind of stiff upper lip of Britishness, is it? I mean, we're both British. Like, I think it's something perhaps we all have a problem with as humans, that we are scared of sharing parts of ourselves that even we're uncomfortable with.
Yeah, it's a vulnerability. When you open yourself up, it's when you're feeling your weakest. You want to be strong all the time, but as soon as you say, "Look, there's something wrong," it feels like that's just a key for someone to come in and attack. But really, what it is just it's an opportunity for people to see the problem that you're going through and help. And so I think that music's it really is tied to that, interestingly. Because you could have a conversation with someone, you could be there on a Sunday morning trying to say these things, not really be able to express it all that well. You might say the wrong thing, you're not sure what to do on both sides of the conversation. But you could go sit in your car and you could put on a really happy song, and you could feel all that, or you could put on what people would call a sad song. For me, maybe it's an emo tune. That's what I quite like. And I put it on, and I could belt out the lyrics and get all this. I could feel all this, like this raw energy, this emotion just coursing through me. And I'm like, why couldn't I do that in there? Why couldn't I do that in the conversation? So I find that music's a really good way of just getting in tune with my own feelings, even though they're not feelings that I wrote down. Somebody else wrote them thousands of miles away, but I can still feel that same emotion, and it sort of helps to put pins in a map or labels on your emotions as to what you're feeling. I think it's a really powerful way of getting those feelings across.
So with Route 66, you've been developing a sense of community through the music. Dialogue. How have you had much feedback from people about your music and people sharing themselves?
Yes, actually, there's been an amazing response. The first EP went down really well. It was really well received. It was called "We Are Followers," and it wasn't so deep, but there was still sort of this connection to the mental health. It was a little bit before the real time where I sort of started going in deep on it. But yeah, it begins to sort of pen the journey, my journey through spiritual life, through physical life, and and to start thinking about it. And through that, through sharing my experiences, I've had other people coming forward and going, oh yeah, I feel that too, or oh, so that's what I've been feeling. And we've started having conversations, and some people have messaged saying, oh, can we talk about this? I'm feeling kind of low. I want to talk about this, or I don't really know what I'm doing with my faith. Can we have a chat? And so yeah, we've had chats. I've had phone calls with people out of it, and it seems to have helped them. We might not have answers, but it certainly is. We've had conversations about things, which is, in my mind, the biggest success, to actually have people talking about their spiritual life or their mental health, or just things that are going on that are troubling them. And to have that come out of writing music and putting the odd social media post out there is really quite incredible.
Yeah, I really enjoyed your video that you posted, I think in June or July time, about why we need to talk about mental health, why we need to talk about it in our churches and ecclesias. And I think the big takeaway that I had from it is that we need to listen, and like how important listening is to each other.
Yeah, listening is the backbone of anything mental health based. And that's not listening to get your point in next. It's not waiting for the other person to finish. It's hearing what they're saying, taking it in, understanding that that is what they're experiencing, that that is their life viewpoint, and then responding, actively responding, going, okay, so you've told me that. This is how I feel about the situation, or this is what I think you should do. And that comes from really internalizing what you've heard and what you've listened to. So yeah, totally, listening is the backbone of anything in life, I would go as far as saying.
And validating people's feelings and thoughts as well.
Yeah.
Because part of the problem why people don't feel they can share is that they don't feel validated and valued by what's going on in their head and heart. And acknowledging that our experiences are different, but also I think what you were saying about this sense of community and response is that people have felt they're not alone. So by like listening to your music and opening up more conversations about mental health, there is that sense of community, realizing I'm experiencing the same kind of feeling as you are, and that's okay. And that's incredibly reassuring that, you know, you're both not okay, or you're both struggling, and giving each other permission to have those feelings.
I think one of the biggest challenges that our community has faced is that, you know, in general society, over the last 10 years, the slogan has sort of been, let's talk about mental health. We need to get people talking about mental health. And that was what the crux of my video back in June was about. But actually, that's moved on now. People are talking about mental health. That's not the issue anymore. It's not about talking, it's about listening. But in our community, it seems that we're only just getting to the talking phase. We're only just getting to the bit where we can say, yeah, you know what, mental health is real and we can talk about it. We're behind the mental health drive right now. We need to do more, and we need to listen more. So one of the things that's come up a lot in my conversations with people is that they feel judged. And that's a massive fear, is that people are going to open themselves up and either be laughed at, ridiculed, or just told to not worry about it. And really what someone's opening up to you, what they want is you to go, yeah, you know, you are feeling that. That's what you're going through right now. I might not understand, but I'm going to help you. I'm going to support you in however I can, whether that's just listening or whether that's, you know, maybe you have something that I can do to help you. It's really about accepting, acknowledging, and yeah, as you say, validating what this person is feeling. So there's a lot of work to do, but it is being done.
Yeah, I suppose that culture of judgment, like, you know, can span many things, and perhaps it comes from that feeling that some things are wrong and some things are right, and we've got to categorize everything in the way that we interpret scripture and that we, live our lives serving God and serving the Lord Jesus. But of course we realize that things aren't set in stone in that way.
Yeah.
The Christian life is challenging, and it's about change, and it's about a continual growing relationship with God and Jesus and each other. It's not stagnant. I guess it's also about kind of living with uncertainty. Yeah. So living with doubt. And that really, I think, connects with mental health as well, and spiritual health. We can't separate the two. I think they're very, we are spiritual beings as humans. And we have to, we definitely have to be kind with ourselves and each other, in that there is, there is a lot of doubt in our lives, but that's part of our faith. It's part of our relationships with each other.
Absolutely. I think it's totally important to realise that anyone out there who's listening to this and is doubting their faith at the minute, doubting is faith. That's something that I've come to really understand. You can't have one without the other. You can't have faith and not doubt. You might feel certain in your beliefs, but you're never not going to have doubt in some respects. So the most studied person, they might believe with all their heart, but there is still an element of doubt, whether they realise it or not, that is the cornerstone of their belief. The belief is formed from that. So for people who are doubting faith, I think it's really important to know that you really aren't alone, because everybody doubts. They just might not know it. And at the end of the day, we're all human. We can study scripture as much as we want, but we're all different. We all take things in differently. We all read things differently. We interpret things differently. And that's kind of special, I think. I think that's one of the wonders of creation, that we are all so different. And that does play into the mental health game, When people are talking about mental health or listening to someone talking about mental health, it's really important that they acknowledge that the person they're talking to is a human. That they've made mistakes, that they're going to keep making mistakes, but that the mental health problems are not a mistake. That's just all part of being a human, because we all have mental health. We might not all have poor mental health at this exact same moment, but we all have a mental health the same we have a physical health, and it fluctuates. So it's really important to understand that this human that we might be talking to is struggling right now. In the same way we might struggle with tonsillitis, they're struggling with their brain. And so they're not going to be a robot. They're not going to understand scripture exactly the same as you. It's just the human experience. And that's something that I think is really important to Route 66, in that it's not trying to be something we're not. It's about being human. It's about living life as best and as holy a way as possible, but that we're not going to get it right all the time, and it comes with difficulties.
Yeah, definitely. And with your faith journey, are there times that you can reflect on that mental health challenges were more obvious to you, like that, where things in your life were really like resonating?
Absolutely. There's been a lot of times when it might have been doubt, it might have just been personal situations, but that really rocked my faith and mental health. I think when I have a poor bout of mental health, that's when I find it the biggest challenge. I find it really, really difficult to believe sometimes, just because, it's so overwhelming, and that, the world, it really does get too much sometimes. And that's when the doubt creeps in even more, or just go, why have I got to deal with this right now? Mental health, poor mental health particularly, makes having a faith very challenging.
And what have you found as being useful personally, and then from how others have helped you?
Well, for me, usually my mental health is anxiety and depression related. So they're the common ones that people talk about, and it's important to realise that mental health is not just anxiety and depression, and it's not necessarily mental illness. It's all a big spectrum. But for me, along the anxiety, depression lines, when they play up, and obviously that goes really nicely hand in hand with doubt, it's trying to center myself, trying to ground myself in the present, really. For me, I find that I can start to overthink things. And when that happens, I'm like, okay, what's happening right now? What am I doing? Okay, I'm doing the washing up, right? Okay, this pot first, then the next, and we'll get to that later. But this pot is what I'm washing right now, and start to sort of pull myself back. Another thing I like to do is to get out into nature. That sort of reaffirms my belief, as it were. I can go out and see the trees and go, okay, that's amazing. They're green right now, or they've got no leaves, and yet next year they're going to have leaves. Isn't that incredible? And sort of try and pull myself back around to it that way. So that's, yeah, there's some ways. There's plenty of information out there, and I should stress that if people are looking for ways to help their own mental health, you do go out, have a look at some research. The things that people recommend might not work for you necessarily, but they're worth trying nonetheless to see what fits you. And if you're struggling to find that something is working, struggling to get something working for you, then really just keep trying. Don't lose heart. It's not that it's going to be like this forever. It just might not be the right thing for what you need. In the same way that medication doesn't work for everyone, it's about finding what works for you and what fits your routine.
Yeah. Let's talk a bit more about young people and mental health, which has been, I think, like a massive concern over the last couple of years, like seeing the statistics. Poor mental health in young people is on the rise. Self-harming is on the rise. Suicide rates amongst young people globally are on the rise. And I feel like with Route 66, you're trying to connect with young people, particularly through your music, and then of course through mental health. So what would you like to share about that?
Yeah, so I think firstly it's important to know that those statistics are pre-COVID. Pretty much all the data we have on mental health right now that hasn't been conducted about 2020 is all pre-COVID. So these figures are on the rise without the global pandemic. So this year has been absolutely disastrous for the mental health scene. It's been really hard for people who didn't necessarily have a history of mental health problems before. But young people particularly have had their lives completely turned upside down and disrupted this year, particularly those at school, college, those who are just getting on property ladders, those who are just getting into jobs and things, or leaving university. There's a whole host of young people, and that can cover a wide range of ages. In terms of what Route 66 does, I think there's a great opportunity to reconnect with younger people through music, and I think contemporary music is a great way of doing that. It's a really useful way of connecting with them and giving them an outlet for this, for their mental health, to feel their emotions and know that actually, the other people in the Christian scene particularly feel that way. I think that's something that's been really key, is knowing that there are Christians out there who struggle as well. And that plays into the honesty side of things, is that letting people know they're not alone, letting them know that other people do struggle with this, is the biggest challenge, and also the biggest point of Route 66.
Yeah, something I've been thinking about is that I think too easily in Christian communities, like, mental health can be seen as a sin, and we just need to just be really clear. Mental health challenges are not sinful at all. They are completely normal, natural reactions to various life circumstances, experiences. Some are cultural, some are conditioned, some can be genetic too, and there's certainly it's not sinful, and experienced by so many people. Like the statistic, I think pre-COVID was like 1 in 4 people have a mental health challenge of some sort.
It's crazy high, and I think there is that barrier of it's sinful, and it really isn't. And I think if you even look in the Bible, there are scriptural references to mental health conditions. I'm thinking particularly of people like Jonah and Elijah, who both had. This should be a little trigger warning here, and that they both had suicidal tendencies. They both experienced awful periods of depression and these requests to God to kill them. And I think that it's incredible that that's recorded and that's there as an always testimony for us. And then we also look at David, and you go, the songs he's written in Psalms, a lot of them are seriously sad. They clearly come from a depressed mind. So I think if the argument is that it's sinful, it's this, even the most holy of men struggled with their mental health. It's not a sin. It's just part of being a human. It's part of having a physical and mental health.
And we can't be happy all the time.
No, absolutely not.
or joyful. I think the sense of having a spiritual joy is not how we perceive joy in kind of the way the world perceives it. There's something so much deeper. I think especially this year, lots of people talk to me about experiencing many emotions at the same time, and that's fine too. We need to be more comfortable with exercising all our emotions, because actually God has given us all these emotions, and even though some of these emotions are very uncomfortable, I think going back to the doubt thing, we need to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think particularly when you get strong emotions in some aspect or another, it's really important to sit with them. And if there are ones that you don't understand, it's really important to think about them and actually go, okay, it may not be at the time when you're going through. If you're particularly angry at one point, you're not going to be able to sit down and go, right, I'm going to sort of meditate on why I feel so angry right now. You just want to get it out, and that's important to acknowledge. But if you realize that you've had experiences, emotions that you're not used to, that you don't quite understand, or that, or maybe it's just an intense emotion for a while, it's important to sit with them and understand that you're feeling them, and try and work out why you're feeling them. You might not know, you might not have a clue, and that's actually okay. And that's one of the things that's important to understand. If you're feeling really sad and you don't know why, it's okay. I know it's uncomfortable and it's really unpleasant, but your body is feeling that for a reason, and you might not know the reason, but your body is feeling it, and that is happening, and that is true. And that's when you need to start talking about things with other people and say, okay, I'm feeling really down. I don't know why. Let's just have a chat. And yeah, that's the sort of the first steps to talking about things.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's really important to stress again that I'm not a mental health professional. Yeah. I would love to retrain in that aspect one day and actually properly help people. But all of my thoughts, all of my feelings, all of my advice, as it were, if you want to take it as that, is purely experiential. I've not had training. That anything that I'm saying is purely based on my lived experience. And so it shouldn't be taken as professional advice. But helping young people, again, it really comes down to listening and trying to understand. You may be a world away. You may be the parent and not really necessarily aware of social media, and the kid is using social media all the time, or your young person is using social media all the time. And that's a big thing for mental health, is trying to understand where people are and what they're doing, trying to understand why they might be feeling things because they're on social media.
One example is especially this year, I've tried staying in touch with people via text as well. That's one example. Checking in with them and seeing how they're doing can be such a helpful thing. And some people, especially when you're struggling, can't cope with a telephone call necessarily. That can be a situation, especially if it's unexpected, which can cause more anxiety. But sending someone a text message and telling them that you're thinking of them and asking them how they are, I think can be incredibly helpful thing. And to try and keep that consistent as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing, is that you should check in with people, but also don't expect a response. If you think somebody might be struggling, don't bug them, for a better word. Don't keep hammering on, saying, how are you doing? You doing all right? I mean, I need you to sort of be doing all right. That's why I'm texting you. I need you to be all right enough to reply to me, or phone me. I need you to phone me so I know you're okay. Really, you just need to sort of go in there with that understanding message, and you go, hey, I've seen you having a bad time, or I'm thinking about you. Yeah, is there anything I can do? Are you okay? It's fine if you're not, sort of thing. You need to. It's all about understanding and empathy at the end of the day, even if you don't necessarily understand. It's about trying to bring yourself to sit with that person, really sit in with their emotions. So that's something you can do to help other people. Young people works great because they're always on their phone. So but some people might not feel like they want to reply, and that's also okay. You, as the person trying to reach out, you need to accept that and understand that sometimes people don't want to talk, or they don't necessarily need to talk. Actually, an important misconception here is that if you have poor mental health, it's the end of the world. That's something I've noticed when I talk about my mental health. If I say, okay, guys, I'm struggling right now, or I write a social media post about it, say, look, I'm taking time off social media because I need to focus on my head. My head's not right. I need just some space, some time off. And actually, you get an influx of messages, which is not necessarily the thing you need right then. But they're all saying, oh, I'm here for you if you ever need to talk. Whatever it is, you can always talk. It's like, okay, that's really nice. I'm glad you're there, but I kind of need that response at a different time, when I'm not just saying, it's a really bad time. I just need you to check in with me. Or also to understand that actually at that moment, the world's not ending. I just feel a bit poorly. It's not that I'm suicidal. It's not that I have those thoughts whatsoever. It's not the end of the world. I'm feeling really poorly, in the same way that I might have tonsillitis and I need to spend a day in bed. People aren't going to come if you say, oh, I've got tonsillitis. People are like, they'll be all right. They'll be all right in a few days, Sometimes, and I stress sometimes, it's like that with mental health, and it's purely down to the individual. And for me, certainly, it might be just a case of, whoa, I need a few days to clear my head, to get things back on track. Sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes it is more severe, and you've got the times that need medical attention, in which case your best course of action is obviously to direct people towards getting the help they need. And if it's beyond your realms, try and gently guide people towards speaking to their doctor about things. So that's something else that's really important with anybody's mental health.
Let's talk more about specific challenges as well that young people had pre-COVID, and obviously during this year as well. There is an incredible sense of isolation.
Yeah. COVID's been a really rough one for the young person, as I said earlier. It's turned lives upside down. Worlds have changed. People don't see their family, so isolation has been a real big thing. But actually, without COVID, there are plenty of people in isolation. You've got people who live with chronic illnesses, maybe physical, who don't get to see people all that often. And that isolation for them plays on mental health. It pulls in anxieties and doubts. I know people who've not left their house for months on end, who don't get to see people. And that's not even because of COVID. That's just because they're living in a state that doesn't allow them to. Either they're physically unable to, or they're mentally unable to. It's quite a lot of pressure to walk out your front door when you've not done that for 8 months, or 10 years, as it is in some cases. So isolation is a big thing. And again, that text sort of helps to know that people aren't alone. On that line, if you are going to help someone, say you're going to help someone, then you've got to follow through. That's a really important thing, is if you've reached out to someone with a mental health issue and you say, right, we're going out on this day, or we're going to Zoom on this day, you've got to follow it through. Because to someone who's struggling with anxiety or depression, if you then don't show, how can they ever talk to you about something and know that they can trust you. Again, it's really about building trust, and that really comes into safe spaces. But yeah, you've got to follow through in helping someone out.
I thought what was interesting about what you were saying about people reaching out, like going, it's okay, I'm here for you. Like, you know, there's almost this anxiety and pressure that it's about them and not about you. And that there's social expectation that we have to be okay all the time.
Yeah, that is a big thing.
For the sake of the other person, not for your own mental health. It's more comfortable if everyone's doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
Then I don't have to worry about you. But actually, there's no vulnerability in the relationships there. Like, everything then is pretty lukewarm.
Lukewarm, that's a good word for that. Trying to get people to understand that, you need to go further than just checking in necessarily. You need to be prepared to do the work. If you've asked the question, expect them to come back with a vulnerable response. And don't be surprised when they say, actually, I'm not feeling great, I could do with this. I could, even something as menial as, you know what, I've got tons of washing to do that I've not done for a month because I've been really struggling. And the other person might say, oh, okay, that's cool, I want to go talk to someone else. But, you know, what they need to say right there and then is, okay, how can I help? Do you want me to do your washing for you? I can do it with you. Something just to help people get back on track. And you'll find that that's more often than not, that it's the little things that really weigh people down. And just doing a little bit to relieve pressure there helps. And it takes away from that pressure to feel all right. You know, someone's come up to you and said, yeah, I need to do my washing. And someone says, yeah, we can help. That's not just relieving the pressure of doing the washing, it's relieving the pressure of the next time they come on a Sunday, they know they can talk to you and they know they can trust you, and that they can just be honest and say, you know what, oh, it's been a horrible week. Yeah.
And I think like teenage years, going into your 20s, etc., that it's an incredibly social time, a time when you're like gaining independence. And ultimately, young people don't want to be by themselves. And there are times, I think, where even when I've had a bad day and I just think, I don't want to be by myself, I need to see someone. But sometimes people can't even articulate that. And we've got to be more perceptive when people need company and when they are struggling and they just need companionship. They just need someone to hang out with, and even like hang out. And sometimes you don't talk. Sometimes you just
absolutely.
And you can sit in silence. I mean, that's what Job's friends did. But even that is better than someone being like physically isolated and feeling obviously very mentally isolated too.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the time people are kind of scared that they're going to say something wrong if someone's asked them to just be with them, or you know, they're scared of an expectation themselves to help. But for the person who's asked for that help, it's been hard to even get to that point to ask for help.
Yeah, we need to dig deeper into getting to know each other. Just
definitely,
regardless of where we are at in our study or life stage or work, and that we come together and that we're equal.
Yeah, I think that study aspect is really interesting as well, because that's something that I've noticed a lot, particularly in the Christadelphian community, is we are very focused on studying scripture. It's all about studying, and just like in education, there are people who, you know, flow through, they get all the A's and they're fine, but there are also people who are flagging, who don't quite get it. And particularly in spiritual life, you know, that can be really depressing. It can be really hard for people to be like, well, I don't get this, I don't understand that, and now someone's come out and said, because I don't understand that, I'm not worthy, or I'm not a Christian. You know, that's a really big thing. So we need to relieve the pressure of actually being studious, because not everybody is. And again, it comes down to that being human, the uniqueness, and understanding that we can't do everything the same way for everyone. We need to be able to break things down and do things differently if someone has different needs. And that may be educational, it may be mental health, it may be physical, maybe disability. There's lots of things, and we need to be a more accessible community. Yeah, and it's all those factors that play into this safe space idea. It's not just, when we talk about a safe space, we're not talking about a space that's safe from harm, solely safe from harm. It's a place where people can come and they can talk without fear of judgment, with no pressure to be someone they're not, with no pressure to be further along with something than they are. It's a place where people can come and be themselves and be comfortable there. So that might be a Sunday morning, because if I'm honest, I don't feel like a Sunday morning is a safe space. Sure, there's no abuse usually, there's no actual harm that goes on there, but sometimes there can be spiritual harm, or there can be other kinds of harm. So we need to be actively trying to create safe spaces in our ecclesias, and that's what I try to do with Route 66. It's coming from a place of, actually we all have problems, and this space should be a place where we can talk about our problems and say, you know what, I'm struggling with this in faith, or I'm struggling with this in life, and for everyone to be like, okay, we hear you, and we might not understand, but we're here to support you, and whatever you need, we're gonna do what we can. And as an individual, that can be really challenging, trying to sustain other people, which is why it needs to be a sort of a whole community thinking. Because obviously you as an individual have your own mental health, and if yours is poor, you should not be expected to be looking after other people. And I am the biggest hypocrite for saying this, because I will absolutely say, as soon as someone texts me saying, oh, I'm feeling rough, and I'm going, oh, I feel awful today, my head is not here, I'll be like, right, I need to help this person. I am the guiltiest person in the room for trying to help someone else when I'm feeling rubbish. But actually, it's really important that we ourselves have a safe space that we can rely on as well, that we can be open with, because we're not going to be 100% on our game all the time. So we need to look after our own heads before we're helping other people.
Yeah, relationships aren't always reciprocal, and that's okay as well, that you rely on, but they don't necessarily rely on you in the same way, but that's okay, because you might be that friend for someone else. This also makes me think very much about Jesus's conversations with people. Those conversations were always really open and honest, and he helped people be more honest in those dialogues, even when they were uncomfortable and didn't want to talk. There were so many people with mental health issues who had dialogues with Jesus. Some who he did heal physically, but of course, like there were bigger spiritual messages in those conversations, and he reached out to those that were rejected and on the fringe and on the outside. Also, we can see with his suffering, I think, especially the times where he had to leave the disciples and go away by himself, that he was also not immune from this, from a struggle.
Oh yeah, totally. I think that's something I talk about in one of my videos about mental health, is that Jesus struggled as well. Jesus was a man. He's got a human brain. He's still susceptible to these things. He was sinless, of course, but that doesn't mean he didn't struggle with temptation and with mental health issues. It's perfectly valid that he was there. So he was in the best place to be understanding. Yeah, he has the most incredible empathetic ability to really understand other people and help them.
And so many of those conversations happen in homes. Just kind of thinking of Zacchaeus, he was like, I'm coming to your house for dinner. I'm not asking you to come to a place to meet me. I'm actually inviting myself to have a relationship with you and to come into your safe space. And I think that's an amazing example to us as well. When people aren't comfortable coming out, we can go to them. Of course, at the moment, it's really challenging to visit people in their own homes, but there are ways to do that, even virtually. We're having conversation right now, kind of visiting my home and vice versa right at the moment. Of course, it's not the same as being in person, but meeting people where they're at, meeting people where they are comfortable, so that they can be more open and honest, and we can develop better relationships. and try and develop, I think, a real sense of empathy, because we were talking before about like social anxiety to be okay all the time and like how everyone else expects us. It's kind of a level of sympathy. Like we feel sorry for people, but we're not really practicing empathy.
Yeah.
Like empathy is definitely something deeper.
Yeah, it's a really hard skill to get down, and I think it's something that is changing. I think people are being more empathetic, but it all comes from understanding your own emotions, I think. And particularly, I think it's something that needs to be focused on as kids. We need to be talking with our children about mental health. We need to be talking with our children about our own emotions and understanding what they are. And really, and I'm thinking particularly about boys. I know I grew up with the stereotype of men don't cry, boys don't cry. Boys really do cry. And it's important to understand, not just as the adult, but as the child, going, why am I crying? Am I sad? Am I angry? Am I frustrated? Am I happy? It's important to understand why we're feeling these emotions, because once you can understand your emotions and why you're feeling something, it's one more step to understanding what someone else is feeling and going through, and whether they have a mental health condition or not, or poor mental health at that time. It's no different. It's the same thing. We're feeling the same things, just varying intensities.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. My 7-year-old son cries a lot, actually. I mean, he's been doing virtual school and he's had a lot of anxiety about like being on the screen all the time, and like it's live and in front of all his friends, and like that pressure is very different than like kind of being in person. And yeah, lots of times where he comes running into my office and he's really sad and he's struggling, and we don't just want to stop people crying. As you're saying, it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel all these emotions, and we need to exercise and explore them and be more comfortable with difficult emotions, being able to talk about them, being able to model them ourselves. I see that in myself as a mother too, in that I need to be honest with my children when I'm not feeling great and I'm not having a good day. Of course, you don't have to share everything, and it does depend on their age. But by pretending that everything's okay, they pick up on that so much more. I mean, their children are super perceptive. And in a way, we can crush that perception. We don't want to squash that perceptiveness, because actually it's a real God-given gift of being perceptive. And it's something that we need to keep alive, because that's going to help us grow with each other and understand more about who God is, because we are made in his image.
Totally. I think if we can raise a generation to be more empathetic, then we're laying some good foundations. We really are.
How can we as churches and ecclesias be more educated about mental health?
That is a great question. And that's the kind of proactive approach we need. Really, after listening, to be better listeners, the second thing is to actually get people who know what they're talking about to come in and to maybe run workshops. There's so much we can learn from other people around, and we are a small community, so we sort of have a responsibility as churches to look after our members, to actually provide real and plausible opportunities for people. So by running events where we present basic mental health safeguarding or training is necessary, not just for other people but also for ourselves too, because it's important that the church actively tries to help. And by getting those people in who know what they're talking about, you're showing that you've got this responsibility, you're showing that you care, and also you're saying that actually we're on the way to becoming a safe space. We've got these things in place, and we hear you. We know that this is going on, so this is something we're doing about it.
Yeah, that kind of makes me think that when we are supporting people, and even if we have a good relationship with them or vice versa, sometimes we can really feel out of our depth in supporting people, and we shouldn't feel alone in that support when we
Absolutely.
are helping someone, and that we need to reach out to professionals, we need to reach out to other people when we need more support to support someone else who is really struggling.
Absolutely. And if you're not sure who to reach out to, or if you want to learn more about mental health, my gut instinct is to, read up on it, listen to people, and be open-minded. Listen to people who know what they're talking about, to people who have been through it, but don't expect people with poor mental health to be your source of knowledge. They might not be strong enough to help you right now, so don't put any extra pressure on them as to what their life is already putting on them. Go and do some research. There's plenty of great resources out there, and try and be a tool for good.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think sometimes when someone's confiding in us, if you're seriously concerned about that person, especially if you think they are self-harming or could be suicidal, I think it's really good to find out about what other support network they have around them, because it can be very collaborative as well. You can create a support network around that person, even when that person can't really articulate, and to kind of see signs as well of on when you do need to increase that level of support if someone is in danger.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can put some helpful numbers and websites in these descriptions and stuff. So
if you are struggling at the moment, please don't be scared to reach out to someone, whether it's a friend or family member, anyone you know, and to try and talk about what you're concerned about. And also there's a ton of professional helplines as well. But we want to reassure you that your feelings are valid and that you are loved deeply by God and by many people in your community and those around you. And you are never alone, even though it can really feel like you're isolated and on your own, especially in this really tough year. We want to reassure you that you are not alone. Please reach out to myself or Michael if you have any questions or comments and want to chat.
Absolutely, yeah. Definitely not alone. And you can always message Route 66 Movement either on Facebook or Instagram, and you can have a chat with me. And it can be completely anonymous. It's fine. You don't need to reveal anything. But yeah, we'll just have a chat and see how things are. Absolutely no judgment here either. You can say anything, whatever's bothering you. You can always chat.
What are your plans for Route 66? To see Route 66 develop?
Yeah, what I'd really like to see is, well, the major thing is we've been working on a fundraising campaign over the last month. I've been writing 24 songs to raise money for Tear Fund, and that's going to be transformed into an EP. Well, 4 EPs. So we're going to be releasing music, proper produced, nice sounding music in the next year. And we'd really just like to keep building on this community, keep talking about mental health, helping people out where we can, and just have people listening to the music and sharing that in that. There's nothing that makes me more happy than someone saying, "Oh, I listened to your music and I got this from it." It's like, "Oh, totally awesome. I didn't write that in necessarily, but you've got something new from it, and that's really cool." So I just like to be able to touch more people's hearts this year.
Yeah, I think sharing music is great, even through your phone. So if you listen to some music that really resonates with you, share it with someone you know who might appreciate it too. And you can just share a track and tell someone you're thinking about them. And you don't really need to say much else, because the lyrics and the music do the speaking.
Absolutely. That's what's so great about music. I love it.